Welcome to another edition of Office Hours with State Representative John Hampton. I am your State Representative John Hampton, and I'm delighted to welcome to our show today Jay Williams, Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, President and CEO, putting philanthropy into action. He's brand spanking new, maybe just a year.
It's been a year.
Jay, welcome,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Williams. Thank you so much.
Please call me Jay.
Thank you, Jay. Call me John. Thanks so much for returning to Simsbury. You were here not too long ago. I hope you've been back.
I have.
Have you? Okay,
I have.
good answer. But you were here for the swearing in of our new first selectman, Eric Wellman, and you were the keynote speaker. And first and foremost, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you for having me. And not only have I been back to Simsbury once or twice, this is probably my fourth or fifth visit to Simsbury. My wife and I made an appearance or made use of the culinary delights here in Simsbury on a couple of occasions. I had a chance to engage one of the Rotary clubs just a few weeks ago. So my background has been in economic and community development for the past several years. I started off my career early on in banking right out of college. Went to work for the city of Youngstown as community development director because I wanted to get my hands dirty doing things that were transformative and impactful in my hometown, in those neighborhoods that had seen disinvestment and neglect. One thing led to another during that period of time, and I ultimately ended up running for mayor of my hometown of city of Youngstown, Ohio. It was an independent mayoral bid of a young man who had never held public office and was going up against what is acknowledged as a broken and corrupt political machine in the Mahoning Valley, and ended up winning and had an opportunity and a privilege to serve as mayor of my city for I was in my second term, so 4-year term, so I was in my 6th year when I was contacted by the White House and asked if I would join the administration. So I spent the past 6 years in Washington, D.C. with President Obama. Most recently, I was heading up the Economic Development Administration, which again took me around the country, engaging communities in economic and community development, which was near and dear to my heart, economically distressed communities. And 2 of those occasions brought me here to the greater Hartford region. And little did I know that at the end of the administration, as my wife and I contemplated where we were going to be next, perhaps back in Ohio or elsewhere, as it would happen, the board of directors was doing a presidential search, and I was contacted by the firm. We started talking. They asked me if I was familiar with the greater Hartford area, and I said absolutely. I'd just been there twice in the past year or so, and as it would happen, I was the candidate that the board selected, and it was a year ago, almost
May,
to the day.
Right? Was it
July.
May?
It was July. Yeah, so July.
Okay.
2017, I started. My family and I relocated here, and it has been a wonderful, fulfilling experience, both personally and professionally.
Wonderful. What drew you to the Hartford Foundation specifically?
I was drawn there were a couple of things. The first sentence that the recruiter said when we first started talking was that, Jay, the board of directors is not looking for a caretaker. And I said, well, good, because I'm not looking to go anywhere to be a caretaker. I want to be impactful. I want to help facilitate and catalyze change. I was also attracted to the community because there's a lot of similarities between Youngstown, Ohio, and Hartford, Connecticut, and then the greater Mahoning Valley and the greater Hartford region, both in terms of the challenges, the opportunities, great, storied towns and cities and communities with a great history, great assets, great people, most importantly, but also facing some existential challenges. And having been forged in a community like that, it was very appealing to perhaps come to Hartford and be a part of an organization that is 93 plus years old, that is the largest community foundation in the state, one of the largest in the country, with a board of directors saying that we have to lean in more, we have to be more impactful. We're going to build on the solid foundation that my predecessors had established, but we were also going to take more risk and look at the changing landscape and figure out ways to be relevant, catalytic. So when you think about that opportunity and that challenge, it was exceptionally appealing. And with the other opportunities that I was considering, the opportunity here in Hartford was head and shoulders. And the final piece was when the interview process was going on before they made a selection. I brought my wife so we could just kind of scope out the community and no decisions had been made. And she said, "Oh, I like Hartford."
Yeah.
So I knew at that point, either if they didn't offer me the job, I was going to have to find some other employment here in the greater Hartford region. But fortunately, they offered it to me, so it allowed us to get settled in right away.
Now, for folks at home that don't know about the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, do you mind telling people
Absolutely.
about its history, what it does?
Certainly.
Yeah, please.
The Hartford Foundation was established in 1925 as a community foundation. It is a charitable organization chartered under the IRS code that receives donations, philanthropic donations from individuals or family foundations or any number of individuals who may have an interest, and we amass and invest those funds with an eye toward perpetuity. So we've been around for 93 years, and the way we invest is such that there's an assumption that we are going to be around in perpetuity. Over the 93 plus years that we've been in existence, we have grown and been fortunate and benefited from the wonderful, generous philanthropy of thousands of people over the 29 region town that we serve, 29 town region that we serve, and have grown to the largest foundation in the state, the 14th or 15th largest community foundation in the entire country. We work with, obviously, our donors, our communities, our nonprofit partners. We grant between $33 and $35 million a year, and are looking to be even more impactful, more catalytic, again, through the work that is done through our nonprofit partners. So without our donors, without our staff, and without our nonprofit partners, we just don't exist. And we have spent the last several years really rethinking, when I say we, this obviously started before I got there, about our place in this community and how we can be more deeply anchored and engaged and connected with those communities that we serve. So again, a community foundation, and to the extent that we have been impactful, we appreciate the partnerships that we have, but we're not resting on our laurels, and recognizing that as the landscape has changed in Connecticut, as it's changed in the greater Hartford region, all 29 of the communities, that we also have to look introspectively and make sure that we are a foundation that is relevant and impactful. And I think that there are lessons and things that can happen here in this region that are relevant for other communities across the country, and vice versa. Things that we learn through our relationships with other community foundations, we also want to share that knowledge here.
So, coming in a year ago, did you come in and say, okay, I'm just going to upheave the place, and did you say, oh, this has got to go, or did you, what's your style? Did you come in and just kind of get a lay of the land?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Even coming in as a leader, I always come in and do more listening than I do talking, despite what my wife might think. I do enjoy listening.
Listening and learning.
Good at it, and listening and learning.
Yeah.
Because you always come in with deference and respect to your predecessors, with deference and respect to those who are already a part of the organization. And that's been my approach, whether I was mayor or assistant secretary in Washington, D.C., or leading one of the divisions of the bank, is you come in and observe, and you learn from those who are there. You do that, and you also bring a new perspective. You bring your experiences, and you, in doing that, engender the trust and the respect of the individuals who make up the foundation. And as a leader, I have always held that I want to surround myself with people who are more talented, more passionate, more skilled in their particular areas. And I tell my staff, if we're sitting around the table trying to figure out a particular issue or approach, and if I'm the smartest one in the room, there's something wrong. I know my job as a leader is to empower, to equip, to bring the best out of the team that I happen to be a part of. And ultimately, as a leader, you have to make the final decision. You have to make the tough calls, and that's okay. So I spent this year really learning from both my colleagues within the foundation, learning from stakeholders within the community, learning from whether they were elected officials such as yourself, elected leaders, leaders in nonprofits, grassroots leaders, non-traditional people who might not see themselves on the agenda of the president of a foundation, and that's not the case at all. So doing a lot of listening. In fact, we're in the midst of a 29-town listening tour as we speak, and excited about what we're hearing. So in doing that, It didn't mean that there weren't changes underway, because there absolutely are. It didn't mean that I would not assert and bring some new perspective as we continue to evolve the organization. But I don't believe in coming in and being disruptive just simply for the sake of being disruptive. But at the same time, when it is time to make those changes, when it is time to go away from the status quo to try something new, I am very confident in doing that. But that confidence is because I know that it's about inspiring and motivating our team to make those changes together. And we've all the while had 100% support from our board of directors.
Now, did the board, as you took over, give you some direction in terms of change? And what were the kind of priorities?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, that you have this wonderful history, but now it's 100 years. They probably have a strategic plan that they're looking at that they maybe said, Jay, here are some of the, what were those?
Sure. So we are headed toward our 100th year
Yep.
in 93 and counting. The board was very articulate in terms of we are putting together a strategic plan, but being more proximate to our communities, being more proximate to the issues. We have a wonderful suite of offices in downtown Hartford.
Yep.
We bring people in from the community constantly for events and functions and training and sharing lessons. But we also recognize, and the board has recognized, that in order to get the pulse of the community, that only happens when you're there at the grassroots level, when you're proximate to the issues, when you're talking to individuals, not just the service providers, but the individuals who the services are being provided to, when you're going out of your way to make yourself and avail yourself to the stories and the challenges and the perspectives of a wide array of individuals. So the board's charge to me and to all of us, it wasn't just a charge to me because I as a president don't have the ability to issue a fiat and things just magically get done. They get done because the staff buys into the mission and the work that we're doing. So to engage our community in ways that were different than we had done before, to make ourselves more available and more proximate to the community. And again, this isn't a slight toward anything that we had done in the past. This was just a recognition that we needed to redouble those efforts, which is why every one of the 29 communities that we serve we are having a listening tour where we're going to them, asking a few simple questions about how we can be more impactful, how we can be more relevant, what are the frustrations, the aspirations that exist in those communities, and then using that information to help shape and inform our strategic plan and to also demonstrate how we're going to act on what we've heard. So that has been the charge of the board. I can tell you that the staff and I, 18 communities in, and we've done 18 communities having started in February. And our goal was to get all 29 within a calendar year, and we're going to miss that just slightly. But we're going to get the 5 or 6 that remain in the first quarter of next year. So that has been the charge of the board, and we couldn't be more pleased with the feedback and the information and perspectives that people are sharing with us.
What are people sharing with you?
People are sharing with us, first and foremost, that they are just so pleased that we are making that concerted effort to have these discussions with them in their own towns and community libraries and community centers and historic venues that they suggest to us would be a good town meeting place. So that's a common theme. We are hearing that while they love their communities and want to talk about specific issues, they also are aware of the need to have a thriving region, that they don't see themselves detached from some of the challenges that might exist in some of the more challenged communities in our 29-town region. We are hearing about this notion and this need to inspire more volunteers. There's a dearth of volunteers across the region, and we've heard it so many times that we committed to convening a symposium or a very broad-based discussion in 2019 about how to inspire, connect, and generate more enthusiasm around volunteerism for the nonprofits in the communities. We are hearing, again, some of the things that become specific to the towns and communities, whether it's more space to gather, resources to help the town plan a redesign, how to attract a more diverse housing stock or families and individuals. So it's been refreshing to be able to hear that firsthand and make it very clear that we're not checking a box saying, oh, we've talked to that community, now we're moving on. We're saying we're going to come back to them and demonstrate how what they have said to us is incorporated into our strategic plan, and what actions we're going to take that are responsive to what we're hearing from those communities. So it has been just a wonderful experience.
Of the 29 towns, are they mostly suburban or a mix?
Oh, it's a mix. So again, Hartford and we haven't had Hartford yet, but we've been in East Hartford. We'll be in Glastonbury in a couple of weeks. We were just in Windsor last week, or earlier this week. We were in Windsor. We've been in Granby and East Granby, and I can't even begin Enfield and Summers. So it has been a mix. The Hartford Foundation's catchment area is all of Hartford County and a portion of, I believe, Tolland County. So it has been a mix of urban, suburban, rural communities. And the thing that has been refreshing is there has been that common theme that we love our community. Here are our frustrations and our aspirations. Here's where we'd like to partner more deeply with the foundation. And oh, by the way, we don't view ourselves as an island separate and apart from perhaps the challenges or opportunities that exist in our capital city. Well, our name is a Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. Sometimes that's a misnomer in people's perceptions, thinking that we're only focused on Hartford, and nothing could be further from the truth. Hartford and 28 other communities. And although we're based in Hartford, and Hartford is the name, and without question, we've got a deep and abiding commitment to the city of Hartford. We have a deep and abiding commitment to each of the other 28 communities, and we're demonstrating that. And what we're hearing is that we were out in Canton, Canton and Avon and some of the outlying areas, and a couple stood up and talked about how Route 44 connects them. If they get up and leave their home and turn one way on Route 44, they can be down in Hartford and enjoying all the cultural amenities and the things that Hartford has to offer. And if they go the other way, they're in Avon and Simsbury and places like that. And that was a perfect example of this notion of how connected we are, even in a state that has 169 towns, as I learned very early on, and some of the challenges that brings. There is a recognition that we will rise and fall as a region.
That's an important point about regionalism, and I've been pushing that, and a lot of my colleagues. It's easy to become stuck in our silos, especially in the suburbs. And Hartford is just hardly 20 minutes away. And so we have to do more in terms of acting as a region, lift all of our students up, lift all our businesses up, lift our communities up together, learn from each other. People hear the Hartford Foundation, they're like, oh, that's just Hartford, but that's not true.
That's not true.
And so it's so important for so many ways for us to build relationships with our urban center, our capital. And work better together collectively to address the issues. I was just talking to somebody about the opioid addiction. That's not just a problem in Hartford.
It knows no boundaries.
It's happening here in Simsbury, and we got to address it together and collectively. So I'm excited that you're literally connecting the dots, which is so important.
And thank you for your leadership on that. It takes, having been in elected office, it takes courage to say and act on that, because it is easy to say, well, we've got challenges and issues that we have to take care of in Simsbury, and that is absolutely true. And the people who you represent expect you to do that. But if that's where it ends, then we are being short-sighted, because the issues that challenge Hartford or East Hartford or Manchester, opiate addiction, as you talked about, it doesn't respect boundaries. It doesn't say, hey, here's the boundary between Hartford and the suburbs, so let me just contain myself here. The ravaging effects can be felt and are felt throughout the region. And not just that, the issue of hunger and food shortages. It may not be as pronounced in some of the areas, and we've heard that in some of the more wealthy areas, that is still a crisis that is not as recognized as it might be in a larger city or a larger urban city. So these challenges don't confine themselves to any particular community. And even those challenges that are more pronounced, the more effectively we address them, the more effectively we mitigate them, that is good and beneficial for the entirety of the region. So thank you for your leadership, for your courage on that issue, and being able to speak about it and act on it. That's not something that should be taken for granted.
What's your perspective as a newcomer to Hartford? Its biggest challenge, opportunities moving forward in your important role, and the region.
Sure, and I alluded to earlier before we really got started is my family and I are new to the Hartford region, but we're not new to the Hartford experience. A lot of similarities between Youngstown and Hartford, the Mahoning Valley, and the capital region here. One of those challenges that is both a challenge and an opportunity is the bifurcated nature. When you look at a city like Hartford that is a small geographic area that is a part of a much larger region, in so many, and this isn't, I'm not the first one to say this, in so many other parts of the country, a lot of these communities, this would be one city. And here, and I've heard the mayor say it, and he's right, that Hartford is a city built on the tax base of a suburb, where you've got upwards of 50% plus of the property off of the tax rolls because it's cultural or institutional or government. And those serve very important functions. But nevertheless, the daytime population of Hartford increases significantly because it is still an economic engine. And those services and the infrastructure tolls and all those things, Hartford has to figure out a way to pay for it without having the benefit of having, the taxable properties that other similarly situated communities might have. So that's a real challenge. And it's a challenge exacerbated by you've got a state with a structural financial issue. And this is interesting. Coming from a larger state like Ohio, Connecticut, in my perception, here's a small but wealthy state. I'm sure they have challenges, but Connecticut's just is awash in money. And when you arrive here, it is still a comparatively wealthy state, but with some serious, I heard the other day that whoever's elected governor is going to step into the office with a multi-billion-dollar deficit. Yep. And these are structural issues that, again, unless addressed through structural approaches, aren't going to go away. So that makes it tough for all of the 169 towns, Hartford and 168 others. And I'm new, so I try to tread carefully that sometimes the issues that still are being debated, and let me just use one example. I've got my own view on it, so let me use an example. I've heard the governor talk time and time again about the near insolvent special transportation fund, and I get that. And I drive and see the infrastructure here in the state of Connecticut, and then I hear arguments about why tolls would be the end of existence as we know it. And when I look at, and we look at every other state around the state of Connecticut has tolls. Tolls are just a common part of what we do. Now, and I get it, you have to be fiscally responsible, you have to have stewardship. But just that issue that can be pretty straightforward and can be done in a way that would provide some necessary investment in our own infrastructure is a political hot potato. And, well, if not that, then what? And I'm not saying that's the be-all, end-all, but I think that's another challenge is that we've become, and that's maybe more reflective of where we are as a country, is that the notion of being able to compromise and work together across political ideologies has seemingly been lost. And when that doesn't happen, we get the dysfunction that we see in Washington and the dysfunction that we see across our state. So I think that's just not a Hartford challenge. That's a state, it's a national challenge, but certainly it's a state challenge. And I'm hoping that ultimately citizens will say, you know what, wherever you stand on your political spectrum, God bless you. That's wonderful to stand there. But when it becomes an impediment to pragmatic approaches, some of which are tough, some of which require sacrifice, we just retreat to our respective corners. That's a problem. And in a state like that can be a problem that can take us to a point that you would question how, is it irreparable to after a certain point. So that's, as a new Connecticut state citizen.
Sounds like you're running for governor.
No, hardly. I believe
you announced it
nothing
today.
could be further from the truth. No.
Now, tell us what kind of programs that the Hartford Foundation funds. Is it just because some foundations just do children's programs, veterans programs? Do you do it all?
We Pretty much, and that's that. Maybe not all, but we do have, and this is part of, as we assess how to be more impactful. We've had a long-standing commitment, investment in education, and early childhood, and arts and culture, and in community development, career pathways, and things such as that. We have significant investments in quality of life, the basic human needs. You're making sure that people have the food and the shelter, making sure that we have the people who are suffering domestic violence, that they have, those organizations have the resources. We've got a significant investment in our scholarship programs, in addition to the fact that we have donor advised funds, and those individuals or those families, they can designate their philanthropic givings to whatever happens to be their passion, or whatever happens to move them. So it is a pretty wide array of activities that we support and have for a number of years. And that's not necessarily, in addition to the fact that we always are in a position to respond to the unknown or the unanticipated. We always want to make sure that if a crisis were to hit this community, we would be in a position to provide resources and to engage. So it is a pretty wide array. We want to become and are becoming more data driven, and using data to identify where disparities are the greatest, where the needs are most intense, and trying to direct resources there, not just financial resources, but intellectual. Is there knowledge and approaches that we can tap into and share that would also be of value? So it is, and I think that's what's most interesting, because for those foundations that say we're zeroing in on that particular issue, we need them, and we need many of those to do that. But I think there's also something to be said about being able to take a look at the broad array of needs in the community, use information, and try to figure out how to move the needle and be impactful and effective by targeting, even in a broad array of challenges and needs, by targeting certain areas. So it's going to be an interesting year as we evolve into this next strategic plan.
So we're going to display it on the screen. What's your website so folks can visit? I've been on it, and I love the new video, by the way.
Thank you.
What's your website?
hfpg.org. Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, hfpg.org.
And people can learn about your history, can learn about your priorities moving forward.
Absolutely.
People can also learn how to give.
Absolutely.
To the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, correct?
Absolutely.
You're always accepting.
We are always accepting, and we are, and that's
donations.
A great point. Looking to excite, engage, and expand our donor base. And we want to be clear that philanthropy isn't when you get to a certain point of your career, you've got a 7-figure net worth, or you're thinking about your legacy as we age. Philanthropy is relevant and exciting if you're 16 years old and you've got $5 that you want to use to make an impact. If you're a newly minted college grad and you're saying, I'm into the beginning of my career, and I maybe I have $100 a month that I want to do something with. So we are looking to expand, engage, excite, and diversify our donor base. So we want to be clear that philanthropy isn't something that your grandparents do, or that you hear about from rich Uncle Moneybucks. This is for everyone, and there's a place for every donor and everyone with a philanthropic interest at the Hartford Foundation.
And there's folks in probably a lot in Simsbury who are with nonprofits that are watching and can apply for. We have so many great nonprofits, as you know, across the state and in Simsbury that can look at your website and find out maybe there's a match for funding, whether it's food shelter or. Yep. Jay Williams, thanks so much for being with us here today in Simsbury. Hopefully, maybe you'll come back and do a listening tour here.
Oh, no, absolutely. In fact, my staff, it is going to happen this year. I just don't have the exact date, but we'll let you know on one of your future shows, you can announce it for us.
And please keep up the good work. Let us know how I can be supportive, how we can be supportive here in Simsbury, and keep connected with you and all the good work that you do. Best wishes to you as you address the challenges, but really take on new opportunities. I'm excited for you, and so grateful that you joined us.
We're in this together. Thank you for your
leadership. Thanks a million.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of Office Hours with State Representative John Hampton. We'll see you next time. Thank you and take care.